All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for day 2 of gCON. This is our first breakout session of the day. We have an awesome presentation from Stephane Donze, the founder and CEO of AODocs. In just a moment, I'm going to bring him on. There's a couple of things that I wanted to mention before we go ahead and get started. Just like yesterday in the breakout sessions, we're going to handle questions outside of the Hangout on Air. So if you have any questions for Stephane, please, after the presentation, go to the gCON Google Plus community, and I will provide a link to that in the Showcase app on the right-hand side of your screen in just a minute. And I'd also like to mention we are giving away some great giveaways for this session. We're giving away a Samsung Chromebook 2, which is an awesome Chromebook. We use it here. And we're also going to give away a free t-shirt to anyone that attends the presentation. So if you're interested in any of those giveaways, please stick around until the end of the presentation, and I'll make the form available to you there once again in the Showcase app. So just a couple of notes there. And with that, I think that's everything that I wanted to cover before we went ahead and get started. So, Stephane, if you're ready, we can go ahead and start with your presentation.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew, for the introduction. So I'm Stephane Donze, the founder of AODocs. Today we are going to give you a few interesting information, best practices, advices around how to use Google Drive in the enterprise. And at the end of the session, we'll introduce our product AODocs and how it can help improve your leverage. You better leverage Google Drive in your organization. So let me start with a few slides. I guess I need to share my screen. Okay. Andrew, do you have the screen okay?
Yep, looks great, thanks.
All right, so so what is Google Drive? You can describe Google Drive essentially as a peer-to-peer system where each user has their own files, and then you share files with each other and you collaborate and that kind of stuff. So it's essentially individuals exchanging around documents, which is very good from a collaboration point of view, but the downside of it is that the metrics of who can see what, who owns what, can get quickly complicated. As you can see here in this picture, we have only 6 users, and it already looks like a noodle plate. So when you scale to 60 users, 600 users, or 60,000 users, then it can get difficult to manage from an enterprise point of view. One of the downside of this structure is also the fact that whenever a user leaves the company, whenever the user account is deleted, then all of the files owned by this account are also destroyed and are lost, even if they were shared with other people. So whoever had access to those files cannot view them anyway. So you have to put in place some complex deprovisioning processes where you transfer the files. Mike is leaving, so who is Mike's boss? Well, maybe it's John, so let's take all of Mike's files and put them in John's My Drive, and maybe John's don't really care about those. So it's complicated, and it can cause problems of losing data. I don't know any single Google Apps customer that has not faced that kind of issues when deploying Drive. So to continue on the ownership topic, ownership is really the fundamental concept in Google Drive. And so here you have a list of kind of the privileges that a file owner has, actions that only the owner can perform. So typically, the first 2 bullets have to do with content protection. Only the owner of a file can really delete a file. What does it mean? If you have a file you own in your drive, you hit the delete button, it goes to your trash, and then you can permanently erase it. You can do that only if you're the owner. If you do that on a file that is owned by somebody else, even if it's in your drive, deleting will just hide the file. It removes it from your folder, but the file is not trashed, is not suppressed, and so on. So whoever is the owner of the file is the only one who can really destroy the information. And that's very important in terms of governance, because later on when we talk about best practices, we will introduce the notion of corporate ownership, transferring the files to a single account managed by the company. And when you do that, this account, which is managed by IT administrators, will become the only one who can really delete the information. So anytime you move files to a managed account, you gain protection against accidental or voluntary removal of this information. So first thing, ownership has to do with who can delete the file. Second thing, ownership has to do with permissions. By default in Google Drive, when you create a file and you share it with other people, those other people can share it in turn in some kind of viral way. But as an owner, you can also decide, and that's a lesser known feature of Google Drive, you can decide that only you can change the permission, and so you can share the file without allowing other people to modify the sharing. And that's a privilege that you can leverage. Again, if you want to protect a certain number of documents in your organization, make sure you use this setting so that you can send documents to a supplier, a customer, partners, and so on, and making sure this document will not be shared again with other people. And the last point that is related to ownership is storage. Anything you own is counted against your storage. So as you know, unless you're using Google Drive for Work Unlimited, in which case you don't care about storage, in normal Google Apps systems, each user has a quota. By default, it's 30 gigabytes. It can be bigger if you buy additional storage, but this quota is evaluated is counting only the files that you own. So you can put as many files, shared files in your drive as you want. It's not going to impact your quota limits. So now let's talk about visibility of files. That's how can you determine what you see, what you don't see in Google Drive. The first most obvious area and the closest to you in Google Drive is the My Drive system. That's where you put your folders. You can organize files. You can find anything. It's the closest user experience from a traditional file storage, gCON, macOS, whatever you're used to. But that's usually a small percentage of the files that you have access to. So beyond My Drive, you have something called Shared With Me, where Google Drive automatically puts all of the files that other people have explicitly shared with your user account. So that's you receive a notification by email, someone has shared a document with you. You don't have it yet in My Drive, but you can find it in the Shared With Me list. The main difference between those two areas is that My Drive is your space where you organize your folders the way you want, while Shared With Me is sort of a magic folder where Google automatically puts stuff based on what other people are doing with this file. So that's a second set of files that you may have access to. And then you have other areas which you can find under All Items in your Google Drive interface, which are lesser known files that are not explicitly shared with you, but maybe you have opened it once in your life and maybe you have accessed it, and that the system remembers that you have access to them. So in this list, you can find a bunch of stuff that you have touched once in your life or someday, and that are searchable for you. And the last part is an even bigger amount, which we call invisible files, which are all the files that you have technically access to, but you have no way of knowing that they exist. That's typically anything that is shared with anyone with the link, public files that are in other domains. So that's a very, very large number of files, but you will never, unless someone sends you the link, you have no way of knowing of this other existence. So basically, for content that you have in Google Drive, you have my Drive and the rest of the world. Whatever is in my Drive is easy to access and easy to organize, but the rest of the world is essentially, even if it's shared with me, all items, whatever, you'd have to ask someone to send you the link. And if you're familiar with, if you've been using Google Drive for a long time in your company, you probably hear this sentence maybe 10 times a day. Can you ping me the link? Can you send me the link? Send me the link again, ping again, chat, blah, blah, because that's the mostly the only way to have access to anything that is not in the My Drive area. So coming back to best practices and how to make Google Drive better leveraged in your organization, think about how you can structure your shared folders in a way that can allow your users to add them to their drive and keep and have easy access to those by browsing the content, as opposed to continuously sending themselves over links over email or chat, which leads to confusion and most of the time using the wrong versions of documents. So, of course, you have also the option to search files using keyword, and that's a good alternative to asking the link. But one of the things that you need to understand, not all files that you can open will be shown in the results list. Depending on how the file is shared with you, and depending on whether you have already opened the file or not, you may see them or not see them in the search results list, even when searching for a specific keyword that you know is in the document. So that's an important concept to understand, because that's where you see the difference between sharing with individual users or sharing, making a file public, anyone in the company, anyone with the link. The top line here, you see that anything that you have in My Drive or anything you have opened at least once in your life will behave consistently. You have access to it, you can find it in search results, that's fine. But files that you have not opened, meaning that you don't know they exist and you're searching for them, will be shown only if they are shared with you or through a small group, small being less than 200 users typically. So what it means is that those two red squares mean that search by keyword is not necessarily a good tool to discover content that you do not know of. So back to the previous discussion, the most efficient or the only way to discover new content in Google Drive is via the sharing notification that you receive in your email or by coworkers sending you the link. So let's talk about sharing permissions and making things visible now. There are many ways to make a file visible to a different to another person, from the most specific, where you share with the person's name in the sharing dialog, to the less specific, where you select visibility levels and you say, okay, I'll make it anyone with the link, I'll make it everyone at my domain, people at my domain, and so on. It's hard for end users to understand the nuances between those different options. So that's an area where you can have some human errors in both ways. You can make a file public for all of your domain, believing that anyone will see it, but in fact, because of this effect and because of the the fact that the file doesn't show up in my drive, it will be as good as invisible. And on the opposite, you can select a broader publication and involuntarily make a file visible to anyone on the internet, and that could happen to confidential files too. So it requires lots of training and change management, pedagogy to make sure your users understand those different things. And all of the all of the different bullet points here on the left show you different actions that can lead to sharing a file. For example, if you mention someone in a comment, you say plus John. Okay, now John has access to the file because Google Drive will automatically share it with John. If you move a file to a shared folder, then the file will, the permissions of the shared folder will propagate to the file and will be applied so that the file is shared with the same people as the parent folder. If you attach a file to an email, Google Drive will check the permissions of the file before sending the email, and if the file is not shared with all of the recipients, will ask you if you want to share it, and so on. So there are very many ways to deal with permissions, and if you multiply that by the number of users, you can have very easily some human errors happening. The most common mistakes that are done in this area, I would say the number one is the Gmail effect. When you share something with Gmail, the default setting will be to make it public because Gmail doesn't know if the recipients are Google users or not Google users. So you will see something like this. I'm sending an email to an address that is not in my domain. Google Drive doesn't know if it's a Google user or not a Google user, so it will show you a big warning. Hey, the file isn't shared with the recipient, but by default, propose to make it visible to anyone with a link. You have to click on more options and select individual users and so on if you want to share it only with the recipient. So most users, unfortunately, don't read that kind of warning, so they will say click, click, share and send, boom, and now your file is public. And it happens all the time. Even in our company, which is made of people quite familiar with Google Drive, we had 2 confidential documents made public because of this effect. So number one pitfall, I would say, sharing via Gmail. The number 2 that is very common too is the opposite. You have a file in a shared folder, you move it to another folder, a private folder. You want to put it in my drive. By removing the file from the folder, you will lose some sharing permission and make it invisible for other people. So we have lots of cases of lost visibility because of this effect. So again, this can be dealt with education of end users, but it can also be mitigated by taking control over the permissions of your documents because of the ownership transfer. So back to the beginning, the owner of the file has the opportunity to prevent other users from sharing or to restrict and to take control. So by doing so, if you lock a file in that way, then even someone else sending it by Gmail or even someone else moving it into a folder will not tamper with the sharing permissions. They will stay the same, and guarantee it's a protection against that kind of errors. Another thing that we recommend is to use Google Groups for sharing as opposed to sharing with only individuals. There are a few reasons for that. The first one is simply the limitation. You can only share with 200 users maximum when you share a file with individual users. Above that, Google Drive will not accept. And one of the other reasons behind that is performance. The amount of work that Google Drive has to do when managing files is in fact proportional to the number of files and to the number of sharings. So if you move a folder that contains 10 files with 20 sharings, then you have 200 operations to make. On the opposite, if you have the same 20 person in a Google group, you have only one permission set on the file, and you don't have to change anything in Google Drive whenever you add someone to the group. So the effect, the application of a new person joining the company and being assigned to groups is instantaneous. This person gains access to all the files he or she needs immediately, as opposed to what happens when you have to go one by one to the file and add this person, or add this person to the top level folder and wait until this permission propagates down to all of the individual files. So limitation doesn't exist in groups. Performance is much better sharing with groups. And manageability, obviously, which is a big one, like we discussed in the previous slides, sharing with individuals can lead to human errors. You can put too many people, put the wrong email address, or share or forget someone, and so you have 100 files and 100 different lists of permissions. On the opposite, if you have one of few Google groups, then it's much easier to check that permissions are consistent across your organization. You can integrate that with identity management. So someone joins the company, you put this person in the HR system as a salesperson, let's say, so this person is automatically added to the Google group for the salesperson for North America, and you know that this Google group has access to this Google site and this Google site and this Google Drive folder and so on. And 1 millisecond after this operation is done, this person has access to everything she needs. The only downside of sharing with group is the notification email. The big advantage of sharing with individuals is that every time you add someone to the list of sharing, Google Drive will send the link to the file to this person. When you share with the group, of course, when you add the group to the file, the same notification email is sent. But afterwards, if you add more people to the group, they will not receive this notification, and so they have no way of knowing the file exists. Again, because of this, the file is not added in their drive. Okay. So based on all of that, we have compiled a set of best practices that we really recommend when deploying Google Drive in organization, especially when you have lots of users. So the first item, company ownership, we discussed that a little bit before, but think about defining one or a small number of Google Drive accounts that are not assigned to a human person, but are instead managed by the company or the IT department. And these accounts, you will transfer the ownership of this of files that are important files to the company to this account, and therefore protect them against accidental or non-accidental removal. And you get the ability to lock down the permissions of those files if you use this feature of Google Drive to allow only the owner to change permissions. Then you'll be able to avoid most of the accidents of oversharing or undersharing, making sure permissions are applied consistently across the company. So one, company ownership account. Two, control permissions. So as we discussed, use groups whenever you can. That leads to much more manageable and consistent application of sharing rights. Set permissions on folders instead of individual documents. So you group files. Usually files residing in the same folder are visible by the same person. It's very uncommon that different people will see different lists of files. It would mean that you have one single confidential document mixed up with other non-confidential documents. That's quite uncommon. So usually setting permissions on folder is more than enough and reduces the amount of manual operation, because each manual operation, each time you open a file and you change by hand the list of sharing, you have a risk of human error. So if you can reduce the number of such operations and only set permissions on a few top-level folders, then you will be much more set for avoiding human mistakes. And the last one is kind of linked to the other two. Let your user browse the content via a single folder structure that would be managed by the company, managed by this company account, where you send the links over email or chat. So you have one entry point. You know that if you go to the marketing folder and then you have subfolders and subfolders, you will find everything you need and you will discover the new files. You won't have to ask someone to show you. And these folders can be added to My Drive and made visible. So now you're back to what works, My Drive with controlled permissions and protected contents. Now you have built on top of the same Google Drive a system that is enterprise ready and provides some degree of administration control, and still letting your users enjoy all of the features of Google Drive, like simultaneous editing, easy collaboration, and that sort of things. So as you can expect, those best practices that we recommend are basically what our product AODocs is doing automatically for you when you deploy it in your domain. What we do is, so AODocs is built on top of the Google Drive API, and we leverage this Google Drive API to automatically transfer ownership of files to this single corporate account that we've discussed, switch the file into managed permissions so that only AODocs via the Google Drive API can change the sharing permissions and apply whatever has been decided by the administrator. And then we provide additional features like folder search. We push the managed folders directly into the My Drive of all users. So that's a very powerful feature, because whenever you share an AODocs folder with a user, this user will get the folder in My Drive proactively. It doesn't have to go get the folder and add it manually. If you share an AODocs library with a group, and then later on you add someone to the group, this new member of the group will receive the folder into My Drive. So that solves most of the visibility problems that we've discussed with the all files versus shared with me versus My Drive. No, the only reliable place where you can discover new content is My Drive. We push things to My Drive. And then in addition to that, we have integration with Microsoft Office, so you can open Word files and Excel files into your desktop version of your of Office, even if directly from the Google Drive user interface. And we provide advanced document management features, so custom document properties, advanced search, workflow, and so on, which go beyond Google Drive, but that's another topic. So basically, AODocs helps you enforce all of these best practices that we have discussed. So we have a couple minutes left. I will switch to a quick demo of the product. And so here is My Drive. As you can expect, you have lots of stuff, files that belong to me, files that belong to other people. And I have this red folder here that is in fact where I put all of the AODocs folders. So you can see that all of these folders that I have colored in red because to easily visually identify them. They belong to an account that is named AODocs owner in our domain. That is the single corporate account assigned to the application. And within those folders, everything belongs to the AODocs account. If I open my marketing library, I have all of the AODocs logos and so on. Everything belongs to AODocs. You see that when I'm in a AODocs folder, I have the search in folder button here. So if I'm doing a search using this feature, I will find only documents that are located in this folder. So it eliminates most of the noise that would come from other areas. If I do the same search in all of Google Drive, I will find tons of stuff, and some of it coming from customers I never heard about. So focus search, single ownership. If I put a file, if I upload a file in this folder, let's see this one. So the file will first belong to me because I created it in Google Drive. And then at some point, AODocs will detect the new file and automatically transfer the ownership to this account, to the AODocs owner account. Here you see the transfer has been made. So anything that I drop, either by drag and drop, upload, save from Gmail, any of those options is automatically captured by AODocs and the permissions apply. Now, I have another library, for example, where I store my contracts. And in this library, I want the security to be very tight, obviously, because these are mostly confidential documents. And as you can see in this library, AODocs has automatically locked down the security, so I cannot modify the sharing permissions on these documents myself. I have to go through AODocs to apply them. So I think we are at the end of the time. Andrew, do I have more time or?
Yeah, it looks like we're right out of time here. I just want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to fill out these attendance and giveaway forms. So before we sign off, everyone who's watching, you should be able to see a link to the attendance and giveaway forms in the right-hand side of your screen. And like I said, we're doing questions for Stephane outside of this presentation. So if you have any questions for him, please visit the gCON Google Plus community, which I just put up in the Showcase app as well. So Stephane will hang around for 30 minutes or so to answer your questions about his presentation and file server functionality in Google Drive and AODocs as well. So Stephane, I just want to say thank you for awesome presentation. Definitely learned a lot. And before I sign off, I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to sign up for our last breakout session of the day in a little bit under around 2 p.m. We will have our next presentation, project management with Smartsheets. So I hope to see all of you there for our next presentation, and they're giving away you have a chance to win a Samsung Chromebook 2 as well as some Bose headphones. So thanks again for everyone who stopped by the presentation today, and we hope to see you again in a little bit.